Welcome to Holy Health, the podcast where cutting-edge health insights meet timeless biblical wisdom. Join us as we explore the latest in wellness, fitness, and mental health, all while grounding our journey in the spiritual truths and guidance found in the Torah. Whether you're looking to nourish your body, mind, or soul, we'll help you live a life of balance, vitality, and faith. Tune in to discover how to achieve holistic health through the perfect blend of modern science and ancient wisdom. Let's dive into the fullness of life, body, and spirit together. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Holy Health Podcast. I know it's been a while. Thank you to those of you who've reached out asking when we would be having another episode come out. I'm really excited to bring you guys today's episode right before the holiday of Passover. Because did you know that if you, while you're standing around your kitchen chopping, hopefully or possibly many of you are doing that while you're listening to this episode, or while you were cleaning your house these past few weeks, vacuuming the floor, that there was something you could have been doing that while you were doing these daily chores would have actually made you stronger? Well, today's guest talks to us about just that. Blood flow restriction training is a tool that can be used that has so many different benefits, but it's something that can be used to help make your muscles stronger while you're sitting in a chair. It's not to say, and he's in no way saying that we shouldn't be exercising, but this is a tool that can help you even if you aren't able to exercise the way you may want to. And my expert Torah extro today is by a new guest on this podcast, and what she had to say ties in so well with the holiday of Passover. So blood flow restriction training, Passover, how do they relate? You'll have to listen to the end to find out. But I did want to tell you guys about an interesting article that I read, and I can't remember when and I can't remember where. So if somebody knows what I'm talking about, please feel free to send it to me, link it to me, tag me. But I remember reading an article not too long ago talking about the use of tefillin. Jewish men every day wrap these, I cannot remember the English word, phylacteries, I think it might be, around their left arm. And if you've ever seen somebody when they've taken this box and these leather straps off, you'll notice they have impressions down the left side of their arm that are pretty deep because the tefillin stay on during the entire morning prayer service. And for quite a while afterwards, you'll still see the indentations in the mark where there was restriction, where blood is actually restricted to the limb. And I actually remember reading something about how that has helped to strengthen people's hearts, right? That restricting blood flow to the left arm was actually a way of helping strengthen people's hearts. So most people, I hope I've got this right. Again, this is why I don't do the Torah parts, but I'm pretty sure that if you're right-handed, the tefillin go on your left hand. I'm going to be really embarrassed if I'm wrong about that. And if you're left-handed, it goes on your right-handed. So more people are actually right-handed. So most people are wrapping the tefillin on their left hand. And therefore, they've found an increase in heart and the ability for the heart to be stronger on the left side of people's bodies. And I thought that this was something that was really interesting. And if any of you find that article or know what I'm talking about, please feel free to link it. I probably could ask ChatGPT, but didn't think of that earlier. So I want to wish all of you a Chag Kasher V'Sameach. You should have a happy, healthy Passover. And let me know what you think of today's episode. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, if you've got something that you do that you think could be of benefit to our audience, please feel free to reach out. And if you're someone who just likes Torah and wants to talk Torah and feels you can make some of these connections, reach out as well. I look forward to hearing from you. Okay, hello everyone and welcome to Holy Health. My guest today is Steven Munatones. Steven was born and raised in East Los Angeles. He's a graduate of Harvard University. He can read, speak, and write Japanese and some Chinese. I'd actually call Steven a serial entrepreneur as he's started several companies that have gone on to execute successful exit strategies. In 2001, he met Dr. Yoshiaki Sato, the inventor of Kaatsu, and he studied under him for 13 years before they founded Kaatsu Global. He was also a professional swimmer, winning many different awards and titles, as well as a swim coach for a variety of different USA swim teams. And he's written, I want to say, thousands and thousands of articles on many, many, many topics. I'm not sure how many, but a
Yes.
lot. So,
Yeah.
Stephen, first off, I'd love to welcome you today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
And I just wanted to tell everyone, Stephen and I were actually supposed to do this yesterday. And I got an email early in the morning from Stephen saying, listen, could we do this at a different time? I'm really sorry, but we have a whole shipment of equipment that we just sent over for the IDF, and I need to be available to speak with them to help them, get the equipment set up. So I, of course, said absolutely. Thank you so much for helping our soldiers. It really means a lot. So thank you for
Yes.
doing this.
It means a lot to me. I mean, we're using them, or they're using them for rehabilitation and recovery. Obviously, you're in a hypervigilant state right now, and anything that we can provide from here on our side is it touches our heart. So
Well, thank you. It's so wonderful to hear that because with so much stuff going on in the world, it's nice to hear, that we have friends somewhere. So
yes.
thank you so much. So first off, I want to just ask you, before I actually ask you the obvious question, what is Katsu? What is blood flow restriction? I just wanted to get a little bit of your story because I know you yourself had a serious health scare, that
I had a massive heart attack. Yes. So my problem was actually in the developing of our Katsu equipment. I flew back and forth between Los Angeles and Japan, which is about the distance, flight times and travel time between Los Angeles and Tel Aviv. And I did that 3 times in the course of 11 days, sitting in economy class. And on the last flight, so 3 round trips. So on the 6th flight back, my peripheral vision just narrowed. And my wife met me at the airport. I looked terrible. The next morning, I woke up normally. I don't remember a thing from this point on. I walked downstairs, fell flat on my face. My, at the time, 17-year-old son was at home. Fortunately, he started to give me a CPR, kept me alive. Paramedics came. I went to the hospital, and I had a stent put in my heart, and I woke up 9 days later. And when I woke up, very interesting and very characteristic of my mindset, I asked my cardiologist, I said, where am I? He said, you had a heart attack. My first question was, can I do Katsu in the hospital? And of course, he says, what's Katsu? And you're under our care right now. So that was my health scare. That was 7 years ago. And yeah, I've been doing Katsu ever since. I did it before. And, I profess that it helped my body at least be strong enough, resilient enough to withstand that heart attack. And so here I am.
So tell us what Katsu is, because actually everybody listening probably is not familiar with the word.
Yeah.
And if you could explain to us what the word means and what it actually is, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, so I have this is the word how you oops here we go there so you can see it there.
Mhm.
Katsu. So Ka means additional and Atsu means pressure in Japanese. So it means additional pressure. And that is exactly what the equipment does. You put the equipment on either your arms or your legs, and they're pneumatic bands inside, so they inflate with pressure and then deflate, inflate, deflate, and that actually engorges your limb in blood very safely, very effectively, and that is a catalyst for a variety of hormonal responses. So essentially, it's a very simple device based on a very simple principle. However, it provides very profound health benefits to the human body. So it's a Japanese word that we trademark for this equipment and this kind of protocol.
Okay, so how do you use it?
Okay, so I actually have it. I'll stand back a bit, and I have a
Mhm.
band around my arm. This is the way the band looks myself. I'm gonna not blur my screen. That oops. Um, and this band simply goes around your arm or your leg, and it goes on the upper side. And when you turn the band on, it inflates and deflates. That means your arterial flow, or the blood coming from your heart to your arms or legs, continues.
Mm.
When it's inflated, that means that the blood coming back from your hands or your feet to your heart is slowed down for 30 seconds. 30 seconds of pressure, 5 seconds, the bands are released. 30 seconds of pressure, 5 seconds, the bands are released in a certain algorithm. And when you do that, your arms or your legs get engorged in blood. They literally become more pink. Now I don't have the band on, but I had it on before the show, and this is
Yeah.
my normal color skin, and this is my Kaatsu color, and you could tell the difference.
Wow.
If I could turn it on, then this color will be even a rosier. It'll be pinker. It'll
Wow.
be redder. And what that is doing is it's imitating physical activity, physical action. I'm just sitting here talking to you, but if you measured my arm, this side versus this side will be bigger. There's more fluid, there's more blood in this limb, and because of that, every heartbeat, when my heart goes dun 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 dun, the actual vascular tissue is a muscle, and it's actually being exercised as I'm sitting here. So it's very good for rehabilitation, very good for recovery. Let's say I had broken my arm. Let's say I'd had a cast on, or I had tendonitis, something like that. I can actually just put the bands on while I'm watching TV, while I'm checking my email, while I'm texting on my phone. And that mere action of the bands inflating and deflating allow the vascular tissue to be engorged in blood, and then it allows the muscular tissue to be activated. And so it's a series of processes that occur in the body in order to keep it more resilient, recover better, heal, etc.
Okay, so the obvious first question is, can people do this instead of exercise?
They can, and they do. And that's when people are, let's say, initially people usually come to Katsu because they are injured in some way. Maybe they had a hip replacement. Maybe they, I don't know, broke their toe. Maybe they, hurt themselves in some way. Maybe they have tendonitis. Maybe they were a tennis player and just have a shoulder issue. In these cases, the doctors, rightly so, please relax or recuperate, recover. And in these cases, we have the bands on their arms or their legs. And it's incredible how people come back to us after 2 weeks or 3 weeks and they go, Steve, like, how did I gain strength in my arm or my leg? And the reason why is we think of exercise as lifting weights or running or lifting things, etc. But in fact, exercise is simply that vascular tissue, which is a muscle, expanding and contracting. And when that expands and contracts in our muscle, because we have a lot of capillaries, a lot of veins, a lot of arteries in our body, when that expands and contracts, that is actually doing muscular contractions in the body. Even if I have to keep my arm stable because I have some shoulder problem or elbow problem or wrist problem. And so we developed this in mind for people who are injured, but also very importantly, and remember, I live in the United States. So we have a lot of people who live very sedentary lives, who sit all day long, either because they want to or because they're in an office cubicle and that's what their job demands. So we have a lot of people who have gone from, I don't know, 100 years ago, from a very mobile, active lifestyle to a very sedentary lifestyle where they're sitting most of the day. They're not walking anymore because instead of walking to the fax machine, we just send an email. We're no longer walking upstairs. We wait for the escalator, the elevator. And so the way we use Kaatsu in American offices is basically the people are typing on their computer, or some people even attend meetings with these bands on either arms or legs. And at least internally, they are exercising their body, not externally, but internally. Now, of course, if you want to exercise, and our most common exercise with Kaatsu equipment on is walking. Simple, walk your dog, walk with your spouse, walk with your children, etc. And people do that.
Okay, so I've got a bunch of more questions now about this.
Okay.
Number one, do you recommend at all when they're injured that they do like something isometric, like an isometric kind of contraction while they're doing
Yes, that would be really good. You
Okay.
don't have to do it, but we have a lot of professional Olympic athletes or even business people who maybe they broke their leg skiing, or they fell down at the home, and they want to go back to the office. So in these cases, we have them contract their muscle for a period of time, relax, contract their muscle, relax, contract their muscle, even if they have a bone break. And so this additional a conscious effort to do something enhances this metabolic response to heal the body.
Okay, so first of all, I just want to define isometric for any of the listeners who may not know. An isometric contraction is a contraction where there's really no change in length of the muscle. It's you're not actually moving anything up or moving it down. It's sort of staying stable. So when Steven's saying contract, yeah, you could be making a fist or something like that, but really you're kind of contracting the muscles just by contracting them, or pressing down into a table, or doing something where there's not a major change of length in the muscle. And so the next thing I wanted to say, you said that you could wear it while you're walking. So what's telling the bands how to contract? Is there not like an external machine, like what I would think
Yeah.
of to measure blood pressure or something?
Yes. So this is the
Oh, but it's
external
tiny.
machine.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
okay.
tiny. It puts it in your hand. You could put it in your shirt pocket. You could put it in your pants pocket, and that is our this is our most common, we call it controller unit. It's got all the brains. You just have to press it on and hit low, medium, or high pressure. But most recently, we have a Bluetooth model where this machine actually sits on the band itself, and you tell it what to do with an app. And why is that important? Because most of us are imbalanced to some degree. Many of us, let's say we're right hand dominant, so we brush our teeth, comb our hair, put on our makeup with one hand. And the other hand, you could be a tennis player, you could be, your one side is stronger. It doesn't really matter when you're young, but as a physical therapist, as you get older and older, we start favoring one side or the other. And especially for our older men who seem to walk with a limp, or their gait is poor, and then that, if they're walking with a limp on one side, then the other side gets aggravated, and there's all kinds of issues. So what we do with the Kaatsu unit, with the Bluetooth version, is if we know someone has a poor gait, maybe they have some ankle, knee, or hip issue, we actually put a higher pressure on the injured or weaker side. And so it just slightly. And so over time, we start building up, let's say, your left side a little bit more than your right side. And when we see, or the physical therapist or the doctor or the trainer starts to see the person be more uniform, whatever that is, then we equate the pressure. But if they had a surgery on one side versus the other, so they start to favor that one side, then we actually whatever the weaker side is, or the side that has some imbalance, we put a little bit more pressure on that side in order to make the body as uniform as possible.
Okay, that's actually such an interesting idea. That's really fascinating. And when it comes to things like we talked about, like you could put it on like above, let's say someone fractured their arm, you could put it on above. Um, is there any, again, I'm not like a person who needs research and science, but I'm just curious to know, does it help the bone heal faster? Definitely it
Yes.
helps keep the muscles. That's what I just, yeah.
Yes. So the stimulus for this hormonal response, the stimulus is actually lactate. I should say the first stimulus is the engorgement of blood in the limb, and that enables the vascular tissue to become more elastic. That kicks off things like nitric oxide, vascular endothelial cells, we're getting a little deep here, but when you do some kind of movement, and the movement can be just open and close your hand, or it could be, as you said, some kind of isometric. You could push your hands together, you can pull your hands together, something like that. That actually triggers a higher level of lactate in the muscle. When that when that signal goes up to your brain, then your brain reacts. Oh, that muscle is doing something. There's some kind of metabolic stress on that muscle. And then it starts to release a variety of hormones. Some of those hormones are the hormones that we actually use in the rebuilding of a broken muscle or fracture or a variety of other things. So that's the very simple process that goes along.
Okay, so we have the bands on the arms and the legs. What if I want to do something for my core? How does
Yes,
that work?
good
And I
question.
assume you
So
can't put it around your neck.
no, we only put it on our upper arms and upper legs
Okay.
because those two areas, your bicep, your triceps, your quadriceps, and your hamstrings, those are the big muscle groups in our body. And if we engorge those and they have a lot of vascular tissue. So if we engorge those very conveniently located places on our body, all of that that's the thing that sends a signal to the brain, and then the brain releases the hormones and metabolites. Now, how do those hormones and metabolites actually flow through the body? It flows through the vascular system. Now, when any part of the body is damaged or injured, it could be a cut, it could be a fracture, it could be a strain, it could be a break, and anything that each individual cell has a little receptor. And that receptor is is a signal that when these healing hormones are going through the body, it'll skip all the healthy cells, but the cells that are injured have this little receptor say, hey, help me over here. And that's why when you have it on bands on your arms or legs, it's just the catalyst. It's the start point where the hormones go, and then those hormones. It could be a cracked rib. It could be you simply want a flatter stomach. You could be an athlete who wants a stronger core, and so we use the bands in our arms or legs to activate our core. Now, most people my age, I'll say above 50 would love to have a flatter stomach, a stronger core, stronger back muscles, stronger abdominal muscles. So in these cases, especially if they're working from home, or even if they're working from an office, or they're traveling, simply go to your hotel room, go to your office, go to your bedroom, your living room, etc. Put the bands on your legs, stand on one foot. Stand on one foot, even if you have terrible balance and you can only stand for 2 seconds, holding on to a chair or holding on to the wall. Your core is starting to stabilize. So that's one very simple thing. If you can't do that, simply sit up straight in a chair. I have, like many people, we tend to slouch, we tend to bend over in front of our computers. instead of doing that, have the bands in your legs. Try to sit up straight for 5 minutes, just 5 minutes. Activate your core as your bands are on. So sit up straight, balance on one foot. Once you start to get a little bit more strong in the core, then walk in your office, in your home, outside with a book on your head. Just walk with a book on your head and walk like a supermodel. Walk like a celebrity. And it's amazing that simple action really develops the core. And we know this because a lot of the Olympic and professional athletes whose business is their body, whose livelihood depends on a strong core and coordination and athleticism, etc., they were the ones who taught us these exercises.
Right.
I was shocked when I didn't learn this from a physician. I learned this from an Olympic coach who was from Hungary of all places, who said, I saw him and his big, huge Olympic athletes were walking, in the gymnasium with their bands on their legs and a book on their head. I said, what are you doing? He goes, oh, we're working on our core. And I go, really? And he goes, you try it. I put the book under my head. I walked about 4 feet. The book fell off. And he goes, no, walk straight, shoulders back, walk like you mean it. And then I felt, and he's touch your stomach. I touched my stomach and my stomach was tight, or tighter, I should say, tighter than it normally is. So very simple exercises we can use with Kaatsu to help engage our core.
Okay, so do you think there's an application for this in things that involve the brain, like stroke or TBI, or even things like autism, right? Where you think it improves blood flow to the brain and
Yeah, it's a very, very astute question, because this is actually our main focus from actually during the COVID pandemic period on, because we had a lot of people who were not, either didn't want to or were not able to go outside and go to the gymnasium, go to the pool, go outside, etc. We started to delve more deeply. We started to work with military researchers. We work with civilian scientists, etc. And really importantly, we started to work with esports athletes, gamers,
oh wow.
uh, kids who are using, online playing games. Well, I had no idea when I first worked with gamers. The first thing they did, they put the bands on their arms or their legs, and they said, oh, they saw how their hands got pinker. And they said, well, why is my hand turning pink? I explained why, and they said, oh, then our tactile feel must be greater. I said, yes. So they went to their computers and they were checking out their reaction time. If some little action figure went across the screen, they shot it. But they measure this. They accurately measure this by the millisecond. And I realized, oh my gosh, these young men, and they were mostly men, were playing their games. They started to play the games with the bands on because their reaction time was better, and they were better than their opponent because they're playing against each other. So we took that information, we went to the military researchers, and we told them again, because nowadays we know that a lot of military uses drone operators,
Right.
basically gamers in the military world. And so we put a skull cap on them with electrodes. Then we were measuring their brain wave activity, and voila, we found out that their alpha wave activity is enhanced. That was great because people with PTSD, because of issues, maybe it could be, I don't everything from, unfortunate, wartime activities, to a car accident, to a death of a spouse, whatever the situation is, when, as you rightly pointed out, not only are we increasing the blood flow in the limbs, we're also, and we documented this, increasing the blood flow in the brain. Well, Then we took it to the IOC. The IOC did some tests, and sure enough, they called it cognitive awareness. So when you have an Olympic athlete, he could be running, he could be playing basketball. An athlete is better if they're cognitively aware of what's going on around them, where their teammates are, where the ball is. It could be in soccer, it could be in wrestling. It doesn't matter. And they measured athletes that did a test, just a regular physical test. Then they put the Kaatsu bands on them. They did the Kaatsu. Then they measured the same athlete and they measured their cognitive awareness, and it was increased. So we've just begun developing this from about 3 years ago, and we're excited because the next extension of that is obviously with people with dementia, people with Parkinson's, and it's not necessarily the people who are deep, unfortunately, in with those diseases. It's people just before that, where we want to get people, if they're very interested, maybe they have a family history, whatever the situation is, we want them to start doing Kaatsu now in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. So we want to delay that onset of Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, et cetera, as long as possible. So yeah, I'm happy that you
No, it's
went to
fascinating.
the next level.
Yeah, no, because I'm also thinking then even beyond, like, what about mental health, right? Because if it's stimulating the brain, if it's making changes and changing the alpha waves, then it could also have an impact. Again, I think that so many of these things are made up not just of one thing, but this sounds like an important piece. So, like, where you said hopefully stave off the dementia, I'm thinking if they've changed their diet and done all of these other things that we recommend together with the Kaatsu,
Yes.
hopefully it will stave it off forever and they will never get it. But
Yes.
meaning, you know what I'm saying? So it just really sounds like there could be applications for so many things. And it's funny because I've always been, when people ask me, I mean, there's someone in Jerusalem, not far from my office, who has it's sort of like, to me, it's old school. Like, I'm, as a physical therapist, I really don't use modalities outside of, like, I'll let people use like the red photon light after we're done with what we're doing, stay and use it, come before, use it. Like, I'm not, because people see me privately, so I'm not spending any of our 45 minutes, but you can stay, you can use it. But I don't use ultrasound. I don't use electric stim. I don't use any of that stuff because I found that, I can do way more with changing your movement patterns and you'll feel much better than with an ultrasound.
Yeah.
But so I usually, when people ask me about exercise, I'm like, you reap what you sow. So if you're not moving, if you're not doing anything, but here's something that sounds like you can get great benefits from it and you don't have to do anything besides sit with these bands on.
Except this is very interesting because
Okay.
we work with morbidly obese people,
Okay.
really, really big people. They were so big they never went outside their house. What we found was the stronger that person became, just physically, they consciously saw their body change, even slightly. They felt better walking up a flight of stairs or picking up something. Once they're able to consciously understand that fact, they were actually coincidentally more motivated to start more exercise. So it was just like we can go in this downward circle of depression and frustration, etc. We can go back upwards. And once we think that, and we tell people, Kaatsu is just one of many things you can do: nutrition, exercise, being out and making friends, smiling. I mean, just basic human interaction, be positive. But when you overlay Kaatsu on that, it enhances what the effects are. And we see this upward cycle of positivity where they go, oh, I just walked up a flight of stairs. We have men they can never touch their toes, but all of a sudden they can touch their knees. I'm like, I've never been this flexible since I was a teenager. Or we have men, I didn't know this, that they can't wash their hair or wash their head. They have to bend over because they have shoulder issues. And these men say, Steve, I just washed my hair for the first time. And I said, I what? They said, no, no. I mean, I can, my shoulders are enough so I can do this with my head instead of bending over, or I can tie my shoes, different little things. And then you get those little things, and that's a catalyst to do something more and something more. And it's great to see people just, evolve and basically turn back the clock to when they were younger.
No, it's so interesting. I'm going to ask you about how you use Katsu together with exercise in a second. Because
Okay.
before I do that, there was something that I heard you mention somewhere else. And I think that this is really important because my older patients, like this is a very common complaint that people just feel stiff all the time. And I think that, even like they'll do the mobility work, they'll do the things I get them to do, they'll feel better, but they're always feeling stiff, like things will stiffen up. And I think I remember hearing you saying something about how the Katsu really helped with this generalized stiffness that people get as they age, which I
Yes.
thought was, like inflammation, like just systemic inflammation in the body. But
Yeah. Well, we all know for a fact if it's a cold winter day,
mhm,
and you now, of course, I live in Southern California. You live outside Jerusalem. Cold is relative. We're not Norway, we're not Canada, but it does get
mhm,
cold in the wintertime. So we know when it's a cold early morning and we walk outside, our bodies are just not moving. On the reverse, it's a nice sunny day. The birds are in the air and the beautiful sunrise. We walk outside, and even if we're stiff, that's an easier way to move around. Kaatsu does that on the inside. So when we make the muscles, especially in the legs, but also in the core and the shoulders, when we engorge that in blood, the muscles are warm. They're literally warmer. And so that allows more a better functional movement, better mobility, and that sort of stiffness and crankiness that you have when you wake up is minimized. We even have, especially on our the soldiers who have various injuries, we have them in bed before they wake up. We have them put the bands on their legs generally and just get the blood flowing. Then when they get out of bed, they can turn their legs off of the bed, put their 2 feet on the floor, and that alone, it gets them started their day a little bit better than not Katsu. So we do that frequently. And our oldest user right now in the United States is 99 years old. So, we have a lot of 90-year-olds who do Katsu, and obviously their bodies are not as young or resilient before, but when they do Katsu, they just feel better. And you just have to feel a little bit better.
mhm.
And then your whole, if we can reduce our pain just a little bit, we start to smile more. We start to think positively.
My goal is always like I don't like pain. So like my goal is always to be pain free and I'm trying to help everyone become pain free and I used to make jokes like I couldn't be in the army because if they caught me, they'd just show me the hammer and I'd be like, "I'll give up all the secrets. Don't touch me." Like, I don't like pain. So like I like that and I fully agree. Like if somebody's in pain all the time, like how are you nice? Like if I used to when I was my kids were little, I was like, "Thank God I don't have real pain because like if I have a headache, I'm not nice." Like, you know what I mean? So 100%, if you can help people get rid of a little bit of pain. So can you explain like as a physical therapist, right? How would I use this in my clinic? And if I see people like I in general, because I'm private, like in here we have socialized medicine. So even in socialized medicine, you don't get to see a PT more than once a week. But I really see people once a week and I expect them to do exercise on their own. So let's just say they're coming to me once a week in addition to what I'm doing, or I'm using Katsu with them. Will they get benefit from once a week, or do you really need to be using it every day? Or
Yes, we do see a linear relationship between frequency of use and
okay,
benefits. Now, how we recommend physical therapists to use Katsu is do what you normally do. You work the body and you enable your patients to get better. there's no change what you should do. What you can do is when they show up to your office, and we encourage the the physical therapy clinic that use Kaatsu, ask your patients to come in 15 or 20 minutes earlier if possible.
Mhm.
When they're there in the treatment room or even in the lobby, they could put the bands on. Just sit, read a magazine, play on your phone, whatever you're going to do. That allows the blood flow to start going. Then take off the bands or keep them on, either one they prefer. Then you meet your physical therapist. They meet you. Now you start working on them. Well, now you will find that their body has a greater range of motion, and all of the experiences and expertise that you have to enable them to rehab and get stronger and get better, it will be enhanced. So we're not replacing your expertise. We are just aiding it to for the benefit of the patient.
Okay. Okay, that's good information. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And if you want to use it during exercise, I heard you say you could walk with it. Could you use it during weight training? And how would I change the programming? Is it always 30 seconds, 5 seconds? Like how much pressure? How does that work?
Yes, so you can use it for any physical movement whatsoever. We have professional golfers practicing their drives. We have in the United States, we have baseball. We have pitchers who put it on their arms and practice their throwing. We have American football, the quarterbacks throwing the ball. So every possible exercise, MMA fighters, boxers, wrestlers, bobsledders, skiers. We have arm wrestlers, magicians, all
Wow.
people who play the piano, people who play the violin. All of these activities, they use Kaatsu on. Now, the ideal modality of Kaatsu is what we call the Kaatsu cycle, 30 seconds on, 5 seconds off. That is standard. However, with the app and with the newer devices, you can modify that to be a little bit longer or a little bit shorter. So it'll range from 20 seconds of pressure to 60 seconds of pressure. And so that's pressure on.
Mhm.
And the pressure off is 5 seconds to 20 seconds. And it really depends. So if we have track athletes who are running, that's a very aerobic activity. They're really running fast with the bands on. They can't really do more than a minute of the inflated bands, even at the professional and Olympic level. And so the coaches now know we have, let's say, in training, whether you're in the gym lifting weights or in a track running, you have basic parameters. You have your duration of exercise, you have your intensity of exercise, or in the case of weightlifting, the amount of resistance, the weight, and then you have the number of repetitions. If you're weight training, are you doing 12 repetitions? If you're on a track, are you doing 12 laps around the track? So you have those three basic parameters. Now with Kaatsu, you're adding a fourth, and that is pressure. And especially for athletes here in Southern California or in Israel, we're at sea level. We're not in the mountainous areas. So when we consider these four parameters and we've added pressure, it is similar to, not exactly, but it's similar to high altitude training. So it's similar, like if an Israeli athlete were going to do a high altitude training in Switzerland or in the Pyrenees, etc. It would be they have to adjust their intensity, their duration, and their repetitions because at altitude it's more difficult. There's less
Right.
oxygen. With Kaatsu, we call this a poor man's altitude training. Instead of people in Southern California having to travel to Denver
Right.
or people in Israel having to travel to Switzerland, we can save all that money and replicate this high altitude training in different ways. So we could do it with any form of movement. You could do it sprinting. You could do it long, slow distance running. You can maximize the weight training, or you could do, quick. It depends what you want to do that particular day. The really good thing about Kaatsu is that when you typically do weight training, you train the muscle and then you get sore. What's really happening is you're creating micro tears in the muscle, and that leads to that soreness. Some people think, that feels good. It means I worked out. Well, with Kaatsu, because you're not lifting the same weight, but getting the same benefit, you lift much, much, much lighter weight. And guess what? You're not tearing that muscle fiber. So you're not having that soreness afterwards. So if I wanted, let's say I don't know, a professional athlete, or I'm a model, or I'm a celebrity, and we do have celebrities who do this. They have to build up for a Marvel movie, or they have to slim down for a special role, and they only have a short amount of time. We add Katsu to their training regimen. And so instead of doing weights, let's say 3 times a week, they're doing weights 7 days a week. They're able to shrink the time that they need to transform their body into whatever they want to show. But we get that all the time with a mother whose son or daughter are going to get married in 6 months, and you go, oh my gosh, I need to lose weight. Oh, I need to be in a certain dress, or I want to be in a certain tuxedo. And so we do the same thing with celebrities or professional athletes as we do with the average person who simply wants to change their body composition in a short amount of time in a healthy way.
If I have Katsu, should I be doing all of my workouts with it? Like, do you know what I'm saying? Or should I do some with it, some without it? Like,
So my answer is it depends. Some
okay.
people, especially the older you go,
Mm-hmm.
Kaatsu is it. They go, wait a second, I can do this. Having my morning breakfast, I can do this while I'm watching TV with my spouse. They love it. When you're younger and more active, you like doing things. You like going out for a run or hiking or other things where, I'd hike. If I'm going to go out and hike with my wife or my kids, I just want to enjoy time with them. If I'm going by myself and I'm thinking, I want to get the most bang for my buck, I'll use this. But if I'm just enjoying life and going out, I won't bother with it. So generally what we see the younger people using Kaatsu in a very specific manner for whatever activity or performance they're aiming for. Whereas we get older and it goes from a performance enhancing modality into more of a lifestyle, into I like the way this feels, and they do it every day. So I do see some generational differences how a younger person uses this versus an older person. And same with the professional athletes or the soldiers. We have a lot of Navy SEALs and Army Rangers, et cetera, here, the special operators in the United States. They have very specialized training in their line of work, but they also do Kaatsu. So they have a balance. When they're doing their very, very specific role in the military, they will not use Kaatsu. But when they're in the gymnasium or running and they're more generalized human performance aspects, then they'll use Kaatsu. So it depends.
So it makes sense. But let's say for like the average person, right? Like, let's just say every single day you're doing something, you could just add Katsu. Like, do you see the benefit to, let's say, doing it a couple times a week when you're sitting and watching TV, as well as maybe a couple times a week when you're weight training or running or something? Like, do you understand what I'm saying? Whereas
Yes.
if you're the kind of person who exercises every day, is there a benefit to doing it with some workouts? Or maybe doing it also, is it a benefit, let's say, to sometimes doing it while you're not doing anything, while I'm sitting on Zoom with you? Or I guess that's what
Yes.
I'm trying to ask.
Yes. So we recommend everybody who has a CUTS unit to use it every day.
Okay.
they can you if just that one day, maybe you forgot your device at home, maybe you were just so busy, use it at the end of the day, sometime between dinner and when you fall asleep. You could be doing it while you're blow drying your hair or brushing your teeth. It doesn't have to be a very specific a time of the day. Just have it near we say, put your Kaatsu unit wherever you are most of the day. If you're in the kitchen, leave it in the kitchen. If you have a home office, leave it in your home office. If you spend most of your day in a corporate office, leave it there. And then because it's so easy to use, so you can do it while you're banging out an email or going for a walk at lunch. And if you forget it, that's okay. If you don't have time, take it with you, put it in your purse, put it in your bag, come home, and as you're relaxing, do it there. As long as you're doing it every day, what we've seen is the vascular endothelial growth factor. So those cells that make the vascular tissue more elastic, the frequency of use leads to a greater amount of vascular elasticity. And so when we look at our 60, 70, and 80-year-olds who do Kaatsu every day, and we put a pulse oximeter on their finger, we see that their SpO2 or their oxygen saturation at their fingertip is like 99, 100%. And these are people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. This is one very important indication that at least their blood circulation is very good and significantly higher than people their same age who don't do this.
Okay, so first of all, this is also fascinating, and I could ask you 100 more questions, but I'm not going to. I want to ask you two because I feel like we've covered so much. This is so fascinating. And obviously, if anybody wants to know more, I'm going to ask you how people can find you. But what I didn't get from you, which, I'm sort of going backwards, but that's okay. I throw out crazy questions anyways. How did you get into this? How did you find Kaatsu?
Yeah. So it was at the 2001 World Swimming Championships. They were actually held in Fukuoka, Japan. And at the time, I was one of the coaches for the U.S. national team. It was a fluke set of circumstances, and the Olympic coach asked me if I wanted to be part of the national coaching staff. I spoke, read, and write Japanese, so I offered to go. When I was there, I saw Japanese athletes having their bands on their arms and legs, and I just went up to them and said, "Are you hurt? What are you doing?" And the athletes, of course, they're in competitions, and I'm for the Team USA, and they're for Team Japan. And make a long story short, they said, "Well, why don't you ask the doctor who taught us this?" I called them up that evening. After the competition was over, I actually visited his office. He showed me what he was doing. I was blown away. At the time, I was not thinking about business or opportunities. I was only thinking about my parents. I was thinking, gosh, this would be really good for my parents. And I asked him at the time, Dr. Sato, how do I learn how to do this? And he goes, "Oh, I've been waiting for you." He goes, I want to meet somebody who, is outside of Japan and speaks English. I go, "Well, that's me." And I said, "How do I learn how to do this?" He goes, "Well, I'll teach you." I said, "Great. Like, do you have a book? I'll study and do everything." He goes, "Well, it's all up in my head."
Oh, gosh.
And it literally it was. At the time, he had about 20 doctors in Japan doing Kaatsu, and not a lot of people. And I was it was being the right person at the right time. But it took him 13 years to teach me all of the different modalities and applications of Kaatsu, from people who have cerebral palsy and multiple sclerosis to people who are injured to people who are, athletes and want to do something. So it did take him a long time. And during that time, I translated reams and reams of information. And then in 2014, one time I flew back and Dr. Sa said, "Okay, you're ready. We can introduce Kaatsu to the world. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
Wow. Okay, that's so incredible. I'm not even going to get into how it is that you speak fluent Japanese, but that I'm sure is another great story for another day. So, okay, so let me ask you, my final question I told you is always, what does spirituality mean to you?
Oh, it means a lot. It means a lot to me. I mean, I try to do the best I can here on this earth at this time, but I believe strongly there's a place for all of us after this life, and so that spirituality, that belief I have in my heart, in my mind, guides me every day. I think, gosh, I got to be a good person because I want to be to a good place after I pass away. So it does mean the world to me, and I hope through my actions and words that I can share that, let's all be the best we can be, help each other, support each other, live that spirituality as I think um, uh, everybody would ideally like to be. So it does mean the world to me.
That's really wonderful. Thank you so much for that. So where's the best place for people to find you?
So you can go to www dot put it closer, Kaatsu, so
Mhm,
Kaatsu.com.
mhm. Okay,
And
great.
that's our website. And there's information there. We have a YouTube channel, we have all of the social media channels. And if people want more information, they could always email me or us. And
Mhm,
that is info, so
mhm.
info at katsu.com. Ask any question. We have lots and lots of medical research data and published articles in journals. We have all kinds of clinical studies. So everything I've said here, it's based on something a cardiologist, an internist, a neurologist has already studied in a medical setting, and so ask away, and we will love to share the information with you.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting because almost most of the people who listen actually don't watch on YouTube, but I'm trying to work on the YouTube channel now. So it's good to know, and I'll definitely link everything for people.
Okay.
Like, this has been
All right.
so incredible. I've just enjoyed speaking to you so much. I really want to thank you for coming on.
No, my pleasure. Thank you.
Hey guys, I am so excited. I have chased this woman down for a long time. Once I heard that she has a doctorate in Tanakh from Bar Ilan University. Deborah Geller is here with us today. I mean, who has it? I've literally never heard of someone having a doctorate in Tanakh, and I thought that was super cool. So Deborah Geller is here with us today to talk to us about blood flow restriction. She has this doctorate. She teaches Torah at all levels, everything from high school and on up. And she is here to give us some Torah insight today. And I can't wait. So thank you so much for coming today, Deborah. I'm really excited to have you.
Pleasure.
Great.
Thanks
So
for
what did you think?
so I watched the podcast that you sent me on blood flow restriction. Really interesting, very cool ideas. And yeah, I think that this idea of increasing pressure works on a lot of levels. So I really thought it fascinating, and a metaphor that can be taken in a lot of different directions.
Okay, well, I'm excited to hear what directions you're going to take this in.
Okay, so do you want to you have questions, or should I just you want me to
Oh
run?
no, so typically you talk to me, and if a question comes up, I'll go back at you. But
Okay.
I'm excited to hear really what you have to say, what this brought up for you.
So first of all, you were talking about the idea of increasing the pressure in certain areas of the body in order to engorge the tissue with blood and activate the muscle, right? Is that good
Exactly.
summary?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Excellent.
and that can then, help whether it's after an injury, when a person can't exercise, and it sort of gets the body going in that way to heal the muscle and to even cause the muscle to grow. And I thought that idea that, sometimes we are in need of pressure, and sometimes that pressure has to come from the outside. So I was thinking of, different ideas like this, in Tanach, and being that we're right now, like the week before Pesach, the pressure of cleaning our homes and preparing for the Chag. And it's sort of ironic because I think that, we have this Chag, this holiday that celebrates freedom, and people often feel like, well, now I'm enslaved to my kitchen and my making everything kosher and so on. But the truth is that the real pressure that I think of when I think of Pesach is the pressure that the slaves were under in Egypt, right? We read about that in many different psukim in the Sefer Shemot, the book of Exodus, and also in other places in the Bible. So, just the idea of what we talk about in the Haggadah, right? And we talk about that the pressure increased so much on Bnei Israel. Say, Hine tzakat Bnei Israel ba'a elai. Hashem says, the cry of Bnei Israel of the children of Israel came to me, and Gam ra'iti et halachet, and I saw the pressure, the stress that was put on them, that the Asher HaMitzrim lochatzim otam, that the Egyptians were squeezing them essentially. So when I heard about this idea of pressure causing a muscle to grow, I was like, wow, that is how we grow, isn't it?
It's so true. That is absolutely true.
And
I was thinking,
very, yeah.
Oh, I was just saying, thinking, please. As I was introducing you and I was saying, I've been like hunting you down and after you to do this, and you've had a lot of pressure going on in your life, and we don't have to talk about that here. But I'm thinking, and then I got you to do it just a couple of days before Pesach when we're like all in the middle of like trying to clean and, talk about pressure. So, yeah.
So I think that, unfortunately, a lot of times, we can get so focused on the pressure that we don't focus on the growth that comes as a result of that pressure. I think that, if you took those bands that, remind me what they're called,
Steven, they're blood flow restriction bands. Yeah, they're pressure bands or blood flow restriction.
Right. And if you would just put them on me without telling me what they were for, and I would say, get these off. This is really uncomfortable, right? Like I'm feeling pressure, right? And I've never used them, but I'm assuming that you feel some sort of pressure. And I would say, I don't need this. Why would I want to sit in a chair with these bands on if I could sit in a chair without these bands on? Right? And then you would have to explain to me, well, no, you see, these are actually helping you. They're causing your muscle to regenerate after an injury or a surgery, and they're causing growth and they're causing strength, and that explanation would hopefully encourage me to stick with it, right? So I think that very often when we think about our experience in Mitzrayim, that was, as they say, the crucible that caused us to grow as a nation. And without that pressure, without that, and that final push of pressure, which caused the children of Israel to cry out to God, we would have really just sat there, because until it gets bad enough that we realize, wait a minute, this is not okay. The situation is not tenable anymore. Then we don't get up and move. So that really I thought about a lot.
It's so true. Everything you said, we do grow. We grow from pressure. You grow from failure. Muscle grows by creating stress in the muscle, and we do grow as people, as individuals. So it makes sense that absolutely, we would grow as a nation through that pressure we were under. It just makes so much sense. As you're saying it, I'm just nodding my head and thinking absolutely makes a lot of sense.
So yeah, the other thing that came to mind was, unfortunately, I think that, we then celebrate the freedom, right, of coming out of Mitzrayim, coming out of Egypt, and going to the promised land, right? But the thing is that there's a stop along the way, and that's Har Sinai, that's Mount Sinai, where we got the Torah. And the Torah has all of these mitzvot, all of these commandments that we have to do, right? And so it's very easy to say, okay, well, I was stressed from Mitzrayim and all of the slavery there, but now I just replaced that with a new slavery. That, very often we can say, well, we gave up the slavery of Egypt and that pressure, and then we got a new pressure. We got the Torah, and now I'm just enslaved to that. I have all these commands that I have to do, and I have to clean my house for Pesach, and among other things, right, that the Torah requires of us. So did I just trade one type of pressure for another, and I'm still enslaved to this pressure? And I think that the same way that the negative pressure of Egypt sort of caused us to form as a nation, so now we have these mitzvot, and the word mitzvah really is the same as the word, the shoresh, the root of it is from the word sevet, and which is a team. That idea of we're teaming with God, and we are teaming up with God to create a better place in this world. But that's going to require some work, and work is often seen as pressure. So that sort of pressure, I guess, it creates the better life that we want. It creates the more informed life. And if you think about, let's say, a violin and the strings on a violin, which are pulled taut, because that's the only way to make the beautiful music. And if we say, I want to free the strings from their stress and their tension, I will cut the strings of this violin so they can be free. But then the beautiful music can't come out. So I think that there's a lot of that in the idea of what we see often as the restriction of the mitzvot, which really are meant to guide us into a life which is more meaningful, more powerful, more connected.
Well, it does make a lot of sense, because what you're talking about is there are different kinds of stress, right? There's good stress, there's bad stress, but we need stress. In other words, if people had no stress at all, if our bodies had no stress, if we didn't react, if we didn't have cortisol, which is a stress hormone, right, you would die. Like, you have to have a certain amount of stress to actually live. And I think that if people lived in a bubble where you had no stress at all, how many people, and I've met some of them, have these like seemingly easy lives where they have like all the money and their life looks perfect, and they can sit on their yacht all day, but yet so many of them aren't even happy, right? Yeah. Sometimes I think you do need at least a certain amount of stress in your life to give you happiness, to make you grow. And we know that, like, to build muscle responds to stress. So you do need a certain amount of stress. If it's too much stress, it's not going to be good. But you do need a certain amount of stress to carry forward, to move forward with life, and to grow. So what you're saying makes absolute sense, that, like, exactly like you explained with the violin, that if we don't have a certain amount of stress, we can't have the beautiful music.
Right.
And it's the same with muscles and our muscular system. We need a certain amount of stress to move forward, to be there. Right. And, so there are certain stresses that are really good.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying speaks to the fact that the shoresh of lachat, which is, pressure or stress in Tanach, is, I think, just about always used not with respect to the pressure that Hashem uses to cause us to grow, but it's always our enemies. It's always our enemies. And so I think there might be something there to the idea that if we don't take the mitzvot and use those as the structure or pressure in which to guide our lives, then there's going to be an external pressure from our enemies, from, evil forces, so to speak. And that's not saying that we need to feel enslaved, right? In other words, that we have these mitzvot, but that we have to recognize the mitzvot are there to take all of our kochot, all of our energies, and concentrate them in a way that it's all flowing in the proper direction. Because, right, let's say you would say, like you said, for example, if we allow the arteries or the veins, or I'm not a biologist, obviously, but
Okay.
but if they get leaky, it will reduce the blood pressure. It will reduce the pressure, and instead of all the blood flowing in the same direction and pumping through the heart the way it's supposed to, well, that's a very sick person who has internal bleeding. And like you said, at the same time, if we have those micro tears in the muscle, that's what builds the muscle. If it's too much, then you have someone who's seriously injured and they're going to be on the DL, right? So yeah, I think that's a big idea in the world of the neshama, of the soul as well.
I like that. And I a little bit got the chills when you said, right, that the Torah is there, to guide us. And if we don't do the mitzvah, we don't do what we're supposed to do, then we'll get external pressure, because that's sort of a metaphor for what's going on today. So I got a little bit,
Yeah.
You're right. It's throughout history when we don't do the things that we're supposed to do, that's when we, see that things don't always go the way we would want them to go.
Yeah.
And it's kind of been a pattern throughout history like that. So, just like I hope that here in Israel, we're going to learn our lesson and not do the same thing we've always done.
Yeah.
Throughout Jewish history, hopefully we will learn our lesson and understand that exactly what you said, the mitzvot are there to guide us so that we don't need too much external pressure.
Yeah. I think also the idea of the way that we view God, right, as that it's very important that we understand that God's on our team. The same way that he was throughout the whole story of the Exodus, that hasn't been swapped out for any new version of God. And he's not like some old guy sitting on a cloud with a thunderbolt just waiting and to get us, and to catch us or to trip us up. And he didn't give us the mitzvot in order to provide us with more opportunities to mess up so that he could punish us. Right? That notion is definitely not one that comes from Torah. And even the idea of punishment in a human conception, the idea of punishment is one, of onesh is one that comes from very often a place of weakness, right? It comes from anger, or it comes from vindictiveness, or it comes from a need for control or retribution or something like that. But when we think about the ideal of onesh, even in the human world, right, we call jails correctional facilities. They aren't actually, mostly, for the most part. But in the world of the neshama, Hashem runs, the idea of an onesh is really a correction. And it's meant to be a type of therapy. And just like in the physical world, working out or exercise, it can be uncomfortable. You can feel sore the next day, maybe. But it's meant to, again, cause us for that growth and that closeness with each other and with Hashem. But it's a process. And I think that one other thing that really spoke to me in the interview that I saw was this idea of opening up a small opportunity with the blood flow restriction bands, right? So that people can experience success. And then, like you said, people who haven't been able to touch their toes, and all of a sudden they're able to do that, or to reach something they haven't been able to reach, and so on. And I think that also is something that is a huge idea in Torah, that Hashem provides us with these small opportunities. And when a small opening opens, right, Hashem says, "Pitchuli petach shel pitcho shel machat," right, open for me an opening the size of the eye of a needle. V'ani aftach lachem pitcho shel ulam, and I'm going to open for you an opening the size of the entrance of a cathedral or palace or something. And that idea of we have to take a step. And the step can even be one that's helped along, right? Because, like I said, we're on the same team. Hashem wants to see us succeed, and he loves us. And that's why he took us out of Mitzrayim, from the lachatz that could break us, to a type of pressure which is, guiding us.
Well, that was great. I really love that. It's the perfect time of year to have that metaphor. This worked out so well. And you're right. I really, everything you said was spot on. I loved it. I think it just was super appropriate. And I want to thank you so much for bearing with me. We had some connectivity problems and some Zoom problems at the beginning. And, you know, because this is a week of a lot of pressure. And I want to thank you for bearing with me. And I know that everybody's going to enjoy what you had to say.
I'll just close with this. When you take a piece of coal and you apply tremendous pressure, you get a diamond.
You're right. Thank you so much. Okay. Wishing you a wonderful Pesach.
You too.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. Please seek guidance from a trusted healthcare professional. By listening to this podcast, you release Holy Health and all of its guests from all liability. I'd like to thank Yakir Abelo for editing this podcast.